next speaker, Baroness Bennett of Manor Castle.
My Lords, I thank the Noble Lord the Minister for his clear explanation of this SI. I've got three brief sets of points to make, and I hope the committee will forgive me, given this is about the SI for management of fertilisers and ammonium nitrate material, an intensely environmental issue. I hope the House will forgive me for taking a minute to reflect on the news that's come out this morning about the delay to the Environment Bill for many months. My inbox is full of expressions of fury and disbelief. When we are the chair of COP26, this can only be described as very depressing and embarrassing. There's a huge legislative lacunae, a gaping gap in UK law, and it also hardly sends a message about the importance with which the government regards environmental issues in this hugely nature-depleted, polluted and contaminated land. Work on this bill began in July 2018. We potentially are going into the biodiversity COP in October without that law. It may even be a scrape to get in before COP26 itself starts. So I have two questions I'd like to put to the Minister. I understand he may not be able to answer them now, but what happens with the Office for Environmental Protection? And what's going to happen with giving farmers certainty about applying the fertilisers we're talking about now in terms of environmental land management, the schemes for that? My second set of points come to the issue of the fact that we're now discussing artificial fertilisers, and the committee might remember my interest in soil science, so I hope they'll forgive me for venturing a little into that for a second. It was an old Italian proverb from the 1930s that said that artificial fertiliser was good for the father and bad for the son, and that was talking about the level of environmental damage, the level of soil damage done by artificial fertilisers. And having just come out of the Oxford Real Farming Conference and hearing lots of excellent things on soil, and indeed seeing reports from the Oxford Farming Conference, its fellow companion, there's really increasing understanding about the impact of nitrogen fertilisers, not just on the climate emergency, with nitrous oxide having 298 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide and staying in the atmosphere for 114 years, but also in terms of the impact on soil structure. Because in healthy soils, when you have low levels of nitrogen, then what you see is microbes don't metabolise carbon compounds, but instead excrete them as polymers that act as a glue that hold the soil together. And of course, we're seeing, as we're seeing the floods around the UK now, some of the huge damage, the loss of soils when you don't have that soil structure. So I come to the specific points around this SI, and I'm going to follow up from the point from the noble lady Baroness McIntosh of Pickering, who, with her customary depth and grasp of detail, offered some really detailed and important questions. But I do want to particularly pick up a point she raised about explanatory note 7.3 in the explanatory notes for this SI, which talks about that manufacturers who market quotes EC fertilisers in Great Britain and Northern Ireland will need to be established in the EU to continue to market EC fertilisers in Northern Ireland. Now, this seems to be a pattern we're seeing most often, so I want to ask the Minister what advice it's giving to potential or current manufacturers. Are people actually being told to take their business out of the UK and to set up in the EU, and whether the government has made any assessment of the actual economic and job impacts of this in this industry and more broadly? And there's a specific and related point which I want to raise with the Noble Lord the Minister, and I'd be happy to share the source with him later. And this reflects a report from the Belfast newsletter, and it reflects some of the questions from the Noble Lord Dodds. And this is about peat, and it quotes Robin Mercer from the Hillmount Garden Centre, who said it's now illegal to import a plant which contains on its roots any soil or bark-based peat-free compost, but it is legal to import, albeit with lots of paperwork, plants that are contained within peat. Now, I'm sure the Noble Lord the Minister is well aware of the issues around peat and the need to move away from peat-based compost. And I wonder if the Noble Lord the Minister might be able to look into this and see if there's any way in which we can ensure that we're not encouraging through this and other statutory instruments relating to the end of the Brexit transition period, that we're not actually encouraging environmental damage through agricultural practices. Thank you, my lords.